Fran, what's up, my friend? Thank you for being patient.
What's going on, guys? How's everything going?
Well,
we're good. I mean, we are the Bears have obviously made a lot of moves. We talked to you last week about the trades, and now they've added some free agents this week. The first thing I want to do with you today, Fran, is because you do such a great job. It's not just the draft stuff, but part of your draft stuff that you do that you've explained before is you tier players based on comparable veterans that already exist in their contracts. And I know you have all this information. So I am very curious with the Bears additions here, where their contracts kind of slot in your tiers. And if you can give some context to our listeners and viewers, exactly what the Bears got here.
Yeah, we'll start. I'll start with Drew Dahlman, just because obviously this was a big one here in the centerpiece of that offensive line, lining up at the pivot. And when you look at and I guess let me bring this back. Additional color will be presented here as my big board comes out tomorrow. So all of our diehards over at CHGO and across all of our AllCity network, I'm going to post my top 100, my big board for the first time. It's going to look a little bit different than your typical big board. And I offer the reasoning. One of the reasons for that is because of what I look at when it comes to how much each of these players gets paid on an average per value or average per year basis in terms of their salary cap and how much those guys earn on a yearly basis. And so it's something I track with basically every transaction in the NFL. And it's just because the only way to really kind of get to the bottom of how teams value each position is look at where they spend their money, look at their wallets. And I think when you look at some of these positions, it can be really enlightening in terms of the type of player that earns what kind of dollar amount. And so Drew Dahlman, honestly, guys, he ended up raising the floor for the center position because he got the second highest APY of any center in football. Creed Humphrey, he was at $18 million a year with the Kansas City Chiefs. Drew Dahlman got 14. That's a pretty big difference. But when you look at who some of the other top ones before that, Frank Ragnow in Detroit, he was getting 13.5. You look at Eric McCoy in New Orleans. He was at 12. Lloyd Cushenberry, 12.5 last year. Tyler Biadasz with Washington was at 10. So as they've started to kind of get into those double digits, Drew Dahlman raises the floor there at 14. And so as the salary cap continues to go up, I think that center position will be one that we'll start to see more guys getting into the early teens and north of $15 million a year.
Fran, we had just to follow up on our wide receiver conversation. A lot of Bears fans in the chat talking about Xavier Restrepo from Miami. I know you've got an interesting breakdown on him. Give us the pluses and what do you think perhaps why he is not exactly the guy per se.
Yeah, I think the big thing that when I look at Restrepo is I really liked the player. I think he's really good at his role. He does not put the ball on the ground often. He's a pretty sharp route runner underneath. But that's the thing is that I think he's a little bit limited in terms of the areas that he's going to stress you as a defense. He's not a guy that is going to be that true 3-level threat. He's going to be more of your traditional underneath slot receiver. And, based off what I've seen from him so far, under 5'10", 209 pounds, a thickly built kid, but with a compact frame, not a guy that's going to be used down the field at all. You want to protect him at the line of scrimmage as well. But again, doesn't put the ball on the ground. I just think when you look at those types of players, and again, this is where Carm, I go into, all right, well, who are the types of guys that fit that mold in the NFL? And so I'm just going to go into some of the players that I feel kind of fit that mold, right? So, Braxton Berrios with the previously with Miami, he just signed a new contract, $2 million a year. You look at Kyle Phillips in Tennessee, he's been kind of like a wide receiver 4 or 5 over the course of when he first got drafted. He has since been cut, but he was a similar kind of skill set, right? When you get to there's only so many guys that have that skill set that become, I think everyone thinks of like Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, right? Not as many of those guys hit that ceiling. It's more often than not that they end up being more like role players as opposed to focal points of their future NFL offense.
Yeah, I think there's just so many options out there of guys in the league that can kind of fill the role that the Bears need to fill with that sort of wide receiver 3 within Ben Johnson's offense. I want to steer us back towards the free agents and kind of how these guys stack up. We were talking Dio Dangbo early on in the show, And I think he's an interesting case because I think there's a lot of people out there that feel like the Bears kind of overpaid for him. But when you consider that position and where the elite guys get paid, where does Dio come in sort of what's a fair way to tier him within that position?
Yeah, so he came in actually in the same tier as Drew Dahlman, where it's in that 14 to $18 million a year bucket, and that's where that tier break is at 18. So Odengbo probably a little bit more than I would have expected. I would say when you look at who are the guys with that skill set that are in that price range. Cam Jordan, who played for Dennis Allen, obviously down in New Orleans. He's in that skills. He's in that tier. Draymond Jones, previously with Seattle, that last contract he signed with the Seahawks, he was in that tier. Arik Armstead down in Jacksonville, he's in that bucket right now. I would imagine that George Karlaftis, this is going to be his floor when he gets paid by Kansas City. But when you look at those guys that have that big-bodied skill set, that have that ability to line up snug to the line over the tackle, maybe kick inside at times, have that flexibility to be moved around. This is the higher end of the spectrum for those types of players. But look, that's what you get when you get into free agency. And I do like the scheme fit there with Odengbo. He definitely makes sense as a Dennis Allen type of edge rusher.
All right, so Fran, I've the last few weeks I've been trench drunk and certainly getting hammered off it the last couple days with all the signings the Bears have made. Going into the combine, before we were there, I think I was obsessed in drilling you about all the defensive linemen, right? Well, leaving the Senior Bowl, it was like, man, there's so many good defensive linemen that I want the Bears to draft at 10 or trade back a little bit and draft at 10. Then I leave the combine. Maybe it's because I start to fall in love with nothing better than talking with offensive linemen when you get to the combine. They're very insightful. They have good personalities. They're very smart. So then I leave the combine, and now I'm obsessed with drafting offensive line at 10 or trading back a little bit and drafting an offensive line at 10. So dealing with this trench drunkenness that I'm in right now, like where, with all the moves the Bears have made on the offensive and defensive line, like where are you kind of sitting at right now? I know things evolve as we get, 6 weeks away from the draft, but where the Bears should be looking at with that number 10 pick.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, Braggs, I think they've put themselves in position where you can go best player available, and I don't think that you need to necessarily force one issue or the other. That's why I really like some of the things that they've done so far. Even though you overpay potentially for a guy like Odengbo, it puts you in a position. The value that you get back with that, with not having to force the issue in 5 weeks, I think that's something that you can talk through, right? And really convince yourself that it's worth it, right? So to me, whether you go best lineman available or if you're just going straight best player, I think there's a lot to be said there. I personally, I would love Michael Williams, the pass rusher from Georgia, there for the Bears at 10. I did not have him fall to the Bears in my most recent mock draft. I had him going just a slot beforehand. But I think when you're looking at that would be a perfect combination of both the need, but then all potential long-term need, but then also talent on the board. But again, just because of what they've done, how well-rounded they've been this offseason in terms of just acquiring these guys that can come in and make an impact, I don't think they need to force the issue one way or the other.
And go ahead.
I think the thing that fans are really wondering that since the moves have been made this week is, do you go after Ashton Jeanty or Tyler Warren now that you've gotten trench drunk like Braggs?
Yeah. Man, I think I still want one more year of meat and potatoes before you have your dessert, right? Before you go and you have those guys. I feel like, adding a guy like Jeanty would be awesome. I think that when you look, and you could definitely sell me on it, right? I'm not as against it as I was 5 days ago, before the additions that they've made along the offensive line. But I still think that you still need to kind of eat your vegetables at this point, continue to build up around Caleb Williams. And look, there's something to be said for the fact that Ashton Jeanty would take a lot of load off of Caleb Williams' plate. But I still think that I want to add a little bit more. Even I would probably put Tyler Warren in that same boat, personally, Hogue. I think that when you look at some of the other weapons they have, not that, look, he's a better player than some of the guys they have, but I think at the end of the day, you still want to continue to add up some of those other complementary pieces to raise the floor around those guys.
And again, Fran's got his big board coming out tomorrow. So you are, if you want to be a diehard, if you are not a diehard, now is the time to do it. $36. Our intro offer this week, allchgo.com/diehard. You can scan that QR code on the screen right now, and you get his entire draft guide as well. Yes, Carm.
Well, I just thought that along the wide receiver discussion, if we just threw up our board that Steven put together, who's available, who's not, and put Fran on the spot. All right, the money is doable, Fran. I'm giving you that caveat. It works for the Bears. Of those still available, Kupp, Cooper, Allen, Diggs, Cooks, Lockett. Who are you taking, or are you saying no chance? Don't like any of them. I'm going draft, even if it's later, 4th round on, 3rd round.
I think just looking at it, knowing all right what you've got already in tow, I think I'm probably waiting that out a little bit. I think there's enough of those guys from the veteran market where I don't need to feel the urgency right now. Let me go sign this guy on March 12th or on March 14th. I can wait out that market a little bit. If some of those guys decide that they're going to sign elsewhere, that's fine. I can wait this out a little bit, kick the can down the road. Maybe even you get into May. And that's one of the things that I think gets kind of undersold, around this. There's a ton of excitement this week, right? Everyone's adding players, but building a team is not just about what happens in the second week of March. You obviously go through the rest of the free agency period. You get into the draft, post-draft. Look, Mekhi Becton's going to get a huge contract here in the next couple of days, right? The guard from the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a free agent after the draft. The Eagles signed him after the draft. CJ Gardner-Johnson just got a huge contract. The Eagles traded for him right before the season back in 2022. It is a long off season for you to be able to add talent. Ryan Poles knows this. Ian Cunningham knows this. So I think at the end of the day, patience is especially important. I don't think they need to rush to go and get Stephon Diggs or Amari Cooper or Cooper Kupp. Let's let that market play out a little bit. And maybe you're saving $1 million here or $1 million there, but that can come to roost later down the road.
Well, I have no patience, Fran, and it's been a couple days since the Bears made a move, and I want to do an emergency podcast over Tim Patrick. Okay. Geez. And so while we're sticking to this, because I know we're like getting wide receiver heavy on this show, but that's fine because I do think that that's the next move that reasonably can be made. I understand Ben Johnson has said this is going to be the Bears offense. It's not going to be the Detroit Lions offense. That being said, Bears fans are like, well, they need the Jameson Williams for this offense. They don't have that. And the point I've been trying to make to some is like, I don't know if that guy is available in free agency or in the draft. And so I want you to tell me, am I wrong there? Is there somebody that you're looking at where the Bears can reasonably find him, whether it's here at the free agency being patient or later rounds of the draft, that can fill the Jameson Williams role as best he can?
Yeah, I mean, the guy that comes to mind right off the top would be Isaiah Bond. He would be a day 2 pick, most likely, coming out of the University of Texas, coached, by the way, by a former Chicago Bears assistant in Chris Jackson. So there's some inroads there, and I think when you look at Isaiah Bond, look, he played at Alabama, and the production was solid, but wasn't great in Milroe's first year as a starter back in 2023. He goes into the portal after the coaching change with Bama, goes to Texas, and everyone's excited because Steve Sarkisian does such a great job of leveraging the most out of his playmakers. And he was off to a nice start. I think they really unlocked him from a yards after catch standpoint. But then he gets dinged up. Matthew Golden takes that next step, and all of a sudden he's the focal point of that offense. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at Isaiah Bond, he's got that ability to be that explosive 3-level threat. I mentioned what he can do after the catch. That would be really good in a Ben Johnson offense, but also that vertical element. I think you can get that on day 2. I think there's a little bit of boom bust with the profile, but we've talked about how that's okay for Ryan Poles and this organization. I think that they're willing to kind of swallow that pill if the boom is worth it.
All right. Well, by the way, I like Isaiah Bond. There were multiple times where you watch games, whether it was at Alabama or Texas, where like, man, that guy looks like a first-round pick. Now he's got some limitations too, and we'll break those down as we get closer and closer to the draft. But Fran, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate the insight as always, and everybody should check out the All NFL podcast as well. Today, Fran and I broke down the cornerbacks and safeties in the draft. So a good way to catch up on all of that as we go position by position. That is up on the All NFL YouTube channel and available as a podcast too, wherever you listen to podcasts. You'll go subscribe to All NFL.
Fine. Whatever. We don't have to do a rapid fire. That's fine. We don't have to. We don't have to.
I'm always down for a rapid fire, but no, it's always
How
fun,
much
guys.
did Michael Williams hurt his draft stock here with his pro day?
I'm gonna be honest. I usually go through pro day numbers at the end of the day, so I haven't even seen what happened. What did Michael Williams?
Well,
do?
he ran a 40 and like a 4.8 and a 4.6 or something like that. So people now are saying he's gonna fall out of the top 15.
If Michael Williams falls to the Bears at 10, I would love that fit. So if that can cost them one spot, and gets them past New Orleans, I think that Bears fans should be pretty happy about that. I'm literally what I'm doing right now. I took a break to jump on with you guys. I'm watching all the pressures from all the top pass rushers today. That's like one of the things I'll do on a random afternoon. And so, just finished up Michael Williams, all of his pressures from 2024. The kid's a really, really talented player that maybe the 40-yard dash doesn't always show up.
All right. You talked about Xavier Restrepo, and Hogue loves the gauntlet drill. How did he do in the gauntlet drill?
It's a good question. From my memory, it was very, very good, but I can tell you exactly how he did. Yeah, he put one ball on the ground in the gauntlet, 2 passes overall in the workout, one of which came in the gauntlet, but otherwise did pretty well in that drill. Again, speed, not his forte, but hands, definitely one of his strengths.
Is Tez Johnson going to be undrafted?
Undrafted is probably strong. I do think he still gets drafted, but the 40 time at that size is definitely a bit worrisome.
Okay. I guess that's it. I'll do a shortened version of rapid fire today.
Thanks, Fran.
Appreciate it, guys.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Fran.
See you guys.
We all silly like the mayor.